How should one go about confronting a thief? You severed one of his hands with your blade. Those who sell drugs ought to be executed by hanging. Women who have been caught in the act of adultery ought to be put to death by stoning. In spite of the fact that such sanctions are unthinkable in the Netherlands, this is the brutal truth in other parts of the world. The demeaning and grisly nature of the sanctions that were once carried out in this location is evidenced by the tools of correction that can be found in the prison gate. After the convictions, there were some horrifying scenes. The prison gate was used by the Court of Holland as a house of detainment for the entirety of its 400-year history as a prison. This was in contrast to its role as incarceration for those who had been found guilty of their crimes. Here is where the suspect would wait for their sentences, which might include financial penalties, exile, or the reenactment of horrifying events. Generally speaking, there were 3 different types of sanctions: public humiliation, physical punishment, and the death penalty. The act of being managed to make to look foolish in front of other people is known as public embarrassment. The purpose of publicly humiliating offenders was to serve as a deterrent as well as to create the state's stranglehold on the use of force. In today's society, an accused will remain the center of interest in the media until they are found guilty and sentenced. After the accused has been arrested and taken to custody, there is no further reportage in the media. However, this was not the case for a number of eras. The sentences were read aloud to the audience, and the timing of their execution was made clear well in advance, allowing anyone who was interested to come and observe the proceedings. The convicted person was then humiliated in front of as many people as was physically possible. This was due to the fact that embarrassment was a significant component of the sanction, particularly in the case of sanctions such as the stocks and the pillory. In the event that you were found guilty, you would either be placed in the stocks or tied to the pillory, or you would be forced to drag a stone of shame through the market. It was okay for the general public to yell personal attacks at you, throw rotten fruit, and occasionally dung at you. The infraction that you had consented to was written about on a sign that was referred to as a placard of shame. From momentary agony to long-term disfigurement, physical punishment can take many forms. The use of physical punishment was taken one step further. Spankings and canings were 2 forms of corporal punishment that resulted in momentary agony and distress for the offender. There were also sanctions that resulted in perpetual disfigurements, such as branding, cutting off arms and legs, or dismembering someone's tongue, nose, eyes, or ears. Not only had you been through a horrible experience, but now everybody could tell for the entirety of your life that you had done something wrong because of the brand of the city that was branded into the middle of your forehead or the divide in your nose. A grisly conclusion to the application of the death penalty. The death penalty was an even greater tragedy. The manner in which this was conducted was determined by the nature of the crime as well as the position of the lawbreaker. The most humane method was called beheading, and it consisted of having your head severed from your body with a sharp sword. This was reserved for significant people and representatives of the aristocracy. The faster the implementation was, the more talented the person who carried it out was. The prison sentence meted out to commoners, which consisted of being hung from the gallows, which was far more excruciating. Another method of dying that was excruciatingly painful was known as being broken on the wheel. Radbraken. In this scenario, your hands and feet would be obligated to a shelf or breakbank, and the torturer would split your arms and legs while they were obligated to the rack. Following that, your head would be severed from your body and mounted on a pike for all to see. Those who were accused of heresy and other religious offenses were put to death by being burned at the stake, which was the most serious sentence possible. This was not only intended as a horrible death, but it also meant that there was no chance of being resurrected in the afterlife because one's body would have been completely obliterated. Maybe a fortune nastier than death. This was the end for Jan de Bakker, the first person to fall victim to the oppression of heresy in Holland, which took place in 1525. And this is quite how insanely the accused were punished. What do you think about that? Was their method logical? Let us know your views in the comments, and don't forget to press the like and subscribe buttons.